Let's move on now to our quarterback tiers here on Fantasy Football Today as we give you a look at the combination of tiers between Dave and Heath. They are crying with joy over how good these tiers are and will hopefully help you as well. So let's show you the look of the first tier here as what they look like, tiers 1 through 3. And the idea is kind of when you're going to draft a quarterback here. So tier 1 is exactly the same for these guys, which you'll see here. This is Heath's tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But take a look at tier 1, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson. And Dave agrees with the same list of quarterbacks in tier 1. It's when we start to get tier 2 and beyond is where we have a little bit of a difference of opinion. But as you see Dave's tiers, as we'll throw it up there, the question really is, and Dave does Dave, at least in the notes, I know Heath, I'm sure, did it as well in the story, when you're drafting a quarterback. Now, we tell people to wait. Nobody listens. So we could say draft Josh Allen in round 4, maybe round 3. We tend to see him go in round 2. And then typically it's the domino effect. When does he go? Then you see the next 3 guys, Herbert, Mahomes, Jackson, not necessarily in that order. So realistically, if you are drafting and you're not Dave Richard fantasy analyst, Heath Cummings fantasy analyst, you're just everyday fantasy player, you see Josh Allen, just how good he could be, and then the other guys, when do you think is the right time to pull a trigger?
Round 4, round 5, basically in that range. That's where I'm going. Listen, especially if it's a smaller league, like 10 teams, everybody's going to have a really good quarterback. Even in a 12-team league, everybody's going to have a really good quarterback. I only need to start one, right? There's no pressure to get the position filled. But if you want to
avoid, and again, we're different. You want to avoid the Jalen Hurts, will he, won't he? Trey Lance, will he, won't he?
There's still enough quarterbacks, even if we take those guys out.
What I would say, this is kind of the point of tiers for me, and like this ADP doesn't reflect it, but on other sites, if you're drafting, Lamar Jackson's there in round 4. Like Mahomes, Allen, Herbert all go in round 2 or round 3. Lamar Jackson's there in round 4. If he's in tier 4 with those guys and those guys are gone and Lamar Jackson's there round 4, round 5, then the point of this is to say draft Lamar Jackson. The other guys are too expensive.
Yeah, and again, I think that's good to qualify what exactly the purpose of tiers is. You want to get somebody in that tier. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to get the top guy,
right,
but you're getting a guy that could be very similar to a player in that same group or could even be better in that same group. And in the case of Lamar Jackson, none of us would be surprised if he's the number 1 quarterback this year based on what he certainly has done once upon a time. Let's go now to what the options look like in tier 2 as we look at one difference really for the two of you guys, and that's no Russell Wilson for you, Heath. And so, Dave, you have Russell Wilson in tier 2. I would put him in this category as well. What's the concern? Why does he not join the group of Jalen Hurts, Tom Brady, and Kyler Murray?
It's easier for me to see Hurts, Brady, or Murray finishing as the number 1 quarterback this year than it is Russell Wilson. I know they're going to let Russ cook, but the offensive, like the new offense they're going to run, assuming that's what they've done in Green Bay, that's not been an offense that throws the ball 650 times. And I don't think Russ is necessarily going to be a mobile quarterback anymore at this stage of his career. So I do view him a little bit more like Dak Prescott, like Joe Burrow, whereas I think Burrow, Hurts, Murray could have a season that doesn't require any injuries at all. They're just their best, and they're the number 1 quarterback.
And why is he in that tier for you?
Because I think he's got a chance to finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and we've seen that before in Seattle when he's not throwing the ball close to 600 times. I think they let him cut it loose in Denver. They didn't trade for him so he could hand off to Shervonta Williams and Melvin Gore duo. Oh, you laughed. That was good. I'm glad you liked it. Maybe
Shervonta was good. Maybe the Gordon one was good.
Okay, fine. Maybe I'll stick with that one. Great. I'll work on the Melvin Gordon one. But I think Russell Wilson has potential to be over 30 touchdowns. That's a good start. Well over 4,000 yards. You know he'll contribute a little bit in the run game as well. I think that the Denver Broncos offense will be good throwing the football. Wilson will benefit from it. He's got a shot to finish as a top 5 guy. That's why he's there.
Oh, I agree he could be a top 5 guy. That was just the difference for me. I think the other guys could be number 1.
Okay, so you're looking for more tier 1, tier 2 as number 1 finishers,
right,
whereas tier 3 and beyond not necessarily reaching those same heights. Okay, makes sense. So where you guys have him. I would tend to lean toward Dave here with Russell Wilson because I do think it's going to be a big season for him, that we do see a little spike in volume, and it's not necessarily just because of the offense in Green Bay. I think it has a lot to do with Russell Wilson and the offense in Denver. As we now look at tiers 3 and tier 4, again, this is where you start to see a little bit more separation. You saw tier 3 for Dave, where there is, it's for Dave, where you have Trey Lance and Derek Carr, or at least I think you have Derek Carr there. I might be wrong.
Carr's at the top of tier 4.
Tier 4.
Lance is at the bottom of tier 4.
Okay, so we're looking at tiers 3 and tier 4 for you. And there is no Derek Carr, there is no Trey Lance. Why?
Tier 3 is kind of an extension, I think, of what Dave has in tier 2, because it's got Dak Prescott, it's got Russell Wilson, who he had in tier 2, and then I add Joe Burrow in there as well. I think these 3 guys very easily could be top 5 quarterbacks. I don't quite see the number 1 overall upside. but I do think there's a separation between these guys and Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers. Their upside is higher in my mind.
But why not, and I know you're a Fields guy, so we'll put Fields in there too. Why not Lance and Fields? Because if they hit with their legs,
right,
and then whatever they do as passers, and put them into the top
I
five.
do think they have the same upside. I don't think they have anywhere close to the same floor as the guys in this tier.
So it's more about a floor versus ceiling conversation.
What would keep them out of this? Yes.
Okay, and Dave, why Lance for you, and maybe why not putting Fields there also?
Because I think Lance is better equipped. I like his offense better than Justin Fields' offense. And Fields is a good good runner as a quarterback. I'm really worried about the offense in Chicago, worried about the offensive line, worried about the wide receivers he has. If Justin Fields were in San Francisco and Trey Lance were in Chicago, I don't even know if I'd have Trey Lance in tier 4. He might be in tier 5. And Justin Fields might be in tier 2, not in tier 3. I'd be really more excited about it. They both have lots of upside. They both have downside. I look at Lance as someone who has top 10 potential. Trey Lance, who's probably more around, or Justin Fields rather, is more around top 12 potential. That's the upside that I have for those guys.
I want to look at your tier 4, Dave, because you have Carr, Fields, and Stafford in that group. It feels a little weird to see Jameis, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua in that group also, because to me there seems like there's a little bit of a separation about where the top 3 guys can go versus where the top 3 guys may or may not go.
I think all these guys should be drafted. And that's almost the qualifier for tier 4 for me, is that these are all players who should be drafted in a 12-team, one-quarterback league. Whereas once you get to tier 5 and tier 6, they don't have to necessarily be drafted. And I think the upside is huge for Jameis Winston. You want to talk about a top 10 quarterback? I think he can do that on a per-game basis. I think Trevor Lawrence can do it too. We talk about all these second-year quarterbacks, and we never get to Trevor Lawrence. And this is a team that might throw the ball more than anybody this year because of the question mark at their run game. And Tua also should throw the ball a lot this year, and he's got 2 amazing receivers. So that's why they're lumped in there, and I put them in tier 4 instead of leading them off tier 5.
And for you, it's a separation, right?
Right. It's a separation, and these are probably like my tier 5, tier 6 is where we're at now, because my tier 4 is still some guys we've already talked about from Dave. But yeah, there's definitely a separation.
It's like I'm just curious, why Derek Carr so low?
I don't know that he has the upside to ever get into like the top 6 fantasy quarterbacks. He's rarely throws a lot of touchdowns, and now he's got Devontae Adams. That's great. He's got 1 season over 4,100 yards. I'm just not sold he's as good as Stafford, Cousins, or Rodgers.
Yeah,
I think this is the year that you can make the case for Derek Carr.
Totally.
More
You
than
can.
any other one. Because of Devontae Adams. I love how they threw to their running backs in the Hall of Fame game. And it doesn't mean that they're going to do that in the regular season.
It's going to be bad for Derek Carr if that's the plan.
I don't care about the Hall of Fame game. No Adams,
he didn't
no
play.
Waller,
Right. They weren't there.
No Derek Carr.
They still dialed them up. I kind of like that. And any little bit helps Derek Carr.
Look, if Derek Carr sees your tiers and sees that
he's going to have tiers.
Carson Wentz ahead. I mean,
no, he's in the tier. The list in the tier. Don't pay any attention to that.
Okay, so Carr's at the top of the list.
Carr's at the top of the
list.
list.
Yeah, Carson Wentz over Derek Carr.
Carson Wentz with Derek Carr.
All right, so let's take a look. Let's wrap up this conversation. And for Dave, it's from tier 5 to the end. So
it's basically a way to list all the rest of the quarterbacks that are out there.
Heath has a little differently. Heath, it's from basically tier 7 on.
Yeah.
So is there a guy from tier 5 on for you, Dave, and from tier 7 on for you, Heath? Dave, I'll start with you. That you think can maybe surprise a lot of people this season?
I think Matt Ryan can do it in Indianapolis. I think he's going to enjoy the fresh start. I think he's going to over-target Michael Pittman. I think Pittman's going to have a big year, and I think he's going to do well for Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan has done well. He's finished as a top 12 quarterback gobs of times throughout his career, but the real key for me with Matt Ryan is that he's going to get good protection. And toward the end of his time in Atlanta, he didn't get it, and he's like a ton of other quarterbacks. When they're under pressure, they wilt. He won't have that as much in Indianapolis as long as that line stays healthy. He'll be able to balance it with Jonathan Taylor in the run game. It wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the year, Matt Ryan was a borderline starter in fantasy.
For me, it's Baker Mayfield. He's still right in the prime of his career. He was pretty good in 2020. They just didn't let him throw. Only threw 486 pass attempts, but the efficiency was there. If they go back to 600 pass attempts like they did last year, and he's got DJ Moore going off as a top 5 wide receiver, Baker Mayfield could sneak into the top 12.
It's fun to see how Baker's sort of taking hold of this offense. It said Sam Darnold go sit down, and now you're hearing maybe some Sam Darnold trade rumors, but nobody wants to take on that contract. For me, it's Ryan Tannehill. Just looking at the way you guys have this listed. Again, former once upon a time top 12 quarterback. We'll see if he's reinvigorated by the challenge maybe of Malik Willis, but the change of the receiving core, the Treylon Burks story, he's going to be a good player, but obviously Robert Woods, it might be his best receiving core, maybe not on paper because Julio was supposed to be the good running mate, the solid running mate to A.J. Brown last year, but Austin Hooper's an upgraded tight end, and so we'll see if Brian Tannehill can get back to that, plus with what he does with his legs. So you can wait on the position. You don't have to reach for a quarterback, but we know you guys always do. So be patient. There are a lot of great quarterbacks out there that can help you win your fantasy leagues.